You said you know exactly what you need to do. What is that?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it.
Okay, well, that was on May 10th, and it's funny because I think some people look at it and they're like, wait a second, did he know that he wanted to team up with Westbrook? I don't know that they knew that early on, Jalen, but when you look at what happened here for the Rockets and what James Harden's getting in Westbrook, somebody who he wants to play with, what are you thinking about that?
This is all about ownership. That's why we showed a quote from their owner, Tillman Fertitta. He's a guy that understands the landscape of the NBA has now morphed itself into big names, large markets, and dominant duos. And when he looked down at his team and he was going to pay attention to the bottom line of jersey sales and the ability to be a contender with a puncher's chance to be a champion, you take a roll of the dice and you add Russell Westbrook to play with James Harden in his prime. And I agree. From the standpoint of not giving up anything, but yet getting a younger, more productive player than Chris Paul, it definitely makes sense. But also, again, it puts Houston not only as a contender, but in the conversation. That's why when you saw the quote, he said it's going to be fun twice. He didn't necessarily say that we're going to win it all. And so I understand what Houston's trying to do. I applaud it, and it's great for the game.
You know, I look at this thing, and you just said duos. Well, Chris Paul and James Harden were in a duo. Chris Paul's game is not at that duo stage. Now they do have a duo, and there's no doubt about it. But you look at Westbrook and Harden, and that's a duo. And Mike D'Antoni, these guys do fit. I understand not great three-point shooting from Westbrook. But look, what is Mike D'Antoni's system? Threes, layups, and free throws. Well, most free throws attempted, most free throws made, Harden, Westbrook. Threes. What do you need to get threes? You need to get dribble penetration. No one gets to the rim better than Westbrook. When Westbrook gets to the rim, what's going to happen? He is a great finisher. It's dump off for dunks. It's kickouts for threes. Now Harden shooting threes. This makes sense. The one thing is we've got to look at, we say, well, they've played together before. James Harden wasn't the beard then. He was a different dude. He averaged 9, 12, and 16 points a game.
Coming off the bench.
Yeah, he was coming. So now all of a sudden, their roles are reversed a little bit. You made a great point in the early hour, only one. And that was that Russell Westbrook and James Harden both are chasing the same thing because they do have a reputation. Here's the biggest question, and you haven't even thought about it. And I'm disappointed in you because you haven't thought about this. It's actually mind-boggling. Who gets the State Farm commercial?
Oh, my goodness. We do have issues there.
Well, I'll tell you. We'll
break that down in the third hour of the show.
Let me tell you who doesn't. James Harden. Now, because that came with Chris Paul, not the other way around.
Yeah, there we go.
I want to invoke a couple of names here when you start talking about James Harden and Russell Westbrook's productivity. Tiny Archibald. He was the only guy to lead the league in points and assists. That's two things that Harden and Westbrook have actually done. The big triple doubles for a year. We now see Russell Westbrook doing that. What gets lost beyond their athletic ability is their basketball intellect. Both of these guys understand who they are, where they are in their career, and giving up the ball to a guy that they feel like can make a play. P.J. Tucker made more corner threes than any player in the league. That means somebody's finding him, okay? Clint Capella is not going to create offense on the post. You said it, Coach. He's going to rim run and catch lobs. Now you got two guys to feed him. Eric Gordon can get his own shot off the dribble, but he's a terrific catch and shoot player. Now you got two guys that are going to feed him. These guys are going to be dynamic playing together.
You mentioned earlier, Coach, about how this will be for D'Antoni late game matchups, whatever makes the most sense. But do we feel overall comfortable that Russ is willing to take that back seat to Harden when he has to?
I think that Russ wants to win a championship. He wants to shed the kind of the stigma that he can't compete and win a championship. I think that Russ understands what he needs to do to win. And I think Mike's got to manage that. Because, look, it's an 82 regular game season.
Yeah.
Really where it counts is only one time in the playoffs. And in the playoffs, they're going to have to figure it out. They got 82 games to figure it out.
And you know this dynamic duo thing that we just did with the list and all that does is put the coaches on the hot seat. That's what just happened.
Because you got to use
with
them,
Doc
right?
Rivers, with Mike D'Antoni, with Frank Vogel. that's what
He's got
now
1 year left on his
takes place.
contract, too, right?
Yes.
It's always about the coaches on the hot seat right
And I'm
now.
telling you what, this coach is going to get no love.
Okay, let's get to the Thunder. 10 years ago, the Thunder seemed destined for dominance, but since then, it's been a mass exodus of their stars. It started with the infamous James Harden trade to the Rockets that was back in 2012. Less than 4 years later, Kevin Durant left. In free agency, he, of course, joined the Warriors. KD averaged over 20 points per game in every season with the franchise, was named the league MVP in 2014. OKC replaced Durant by trading for Paul George. George even signed an extension with the team, became an MVP finalist, but last weekend traded to the Clippers, joining up with Kawhi. The only man left had been Russell Westbrook, but that changed yesterday in the trade to Houston. He leaves the Thunder as the leading scorer in franchise history. Here's what some of the guys still there had to say.
And that's my vet. I was really close to him, so sorry. I mean, I guess that's what he wanted to do, and I'm happy for him, and hopefully he has a good season at Houston, I guess. He's a great player. Great player, great role model first, I would say. And taught me a lot of things this year, and everything he taught me, I'm going to just keep taking with me each and every day.
He's a great leader, very genuine person. Really, he's just a great guy, just a great human being altogether. It's like he was the heart of Oklahoma at one point, so it's devastating.
All right, so if you look at it this way, the future does look bright for Oklahoma City. A laundry list of first-round picks lined up over the next 7 drafts. Excluding protections, they hold multiple first-round picks in 6 of the next 7 years, including 3 picks in 2024 and 2026. You add that all up, it's 15 first-round picks, 15 over the next 7 drafts. They'll certainly have needs at every position after what they lost this offseason, but it does certainly look like they could add some people there. I do want to get to the Thunder legacy, and we talked about this just a moment ago. With all of these great players who have come through Oklahoma City, it was almost like a super team, a little bit accidentally there for a while, and then all these guys have moved on. Legacy specifically for the Thunder, but also Russell Westbrook, who was the face of that franchise.
I think first and foremost, Russell Westbrook will get a statue in Oklahoma City. For all of the work that he put in. I think they'll ultimately retire his number, retire Kevin Durant's number as well, and consider James Harden's. As it relates to on the floor, this is tricky for OKC. Here's why. You draft a player like Russ, and even though KD leaves, he owns the fact that I want to be here in the 405. He doubles down, he re-signs. You acquire Paul George on a 1-year rental. Russ recruits him to also re-sign. And then within 2 years, you trade both of them. So for fans and media who like to cheerlead, and I'm one of these people, Dame Lillard staying in Portland and not wanting to join a super team or not wanting to chase the championship, you had a guy that wanted to be there and you moved him. This idea that they're doing the players a favor by moving him, to me, really means we're not a favorite. We're not going to win it all with this group. So why pay the salary cap luxury tax? So we'll move these guys.
Yeah, let's look at what the Thunder actually do have, Seth.
They had a dynamic duo, but a dynamic duo in the West that was not good enough to compete with the best teams in the West. That's really what it comes down to. What they have now is a bad basketball team. That's Billy Donovan's team right now. The question is, now they might as well move Steven Adams, but I think his contract's a little bit too heavy.
Yeah.
But what they have right now is they've got a future. They've got to say, you know what we had, even though we had good players, we had guys that other people wanted, they're not good enough to compete. So what do we have to do? We got to blow the whole thing up, and that's what they're doing by trying to get draft choices and then use those draft choices to get other assets. So here's the bigger question. Will Billy Donovan?
Yeah.
All right, we saw Billy Donovan his last 2 years in Florida.
He didn't like to lose.
Games. Their season could be over by Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so what are they going to do moving forward?
One really quick point. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who they did get Oklahoma City in a
very
trade,
good
was
asset.
not on that list. But
very good asset.
So for each of us that cover college and pro, you just alluded to something I said in the first hour. One, Sam Presti and or Billy Donovan must know they're going to be there to 2026 because that's when all of these draft picks are happening. That's one. Two, for everybody that celebrates draft picks and they have terrific boomer bust potential, In the last 4 seasons, the best players that have gotten picked 25 or later, last 4 seasons, not 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons, are Kyle Kuzma at 27, Pascal also 27, Bogdan Bogdanovic is also 27, and Montrezl Harrell, which means you're getting an above-average player, no all-stars amongst that group.
Because the draft is getting so young and it's so watered down because guys are leaving so early that basically the top of the draft
So,
is
Laura, when you talk about getting draft picks from the Clippers, they're going to be good.
Right.
From the Rockets, they're going to be good. From the Nuggets,
These
they're
are the
going to be
number
good.
one pick.
These are going to be low
Right.
first-round picks that they should be now trying to parlay with their own to catapult themselves into a lottery or to get an all-star level player.
Okay,
like
so
a Bradley Beal, for example.
Good point. So one guy that we didn't see on the list of who's going to be a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder is Chris Paul. Now, we didn't see him on that list for obvious reasons, but how long is he actually going to be with the Thunder? ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski and Royce Young reporting that Oklahoma City GM Sam Presti is already working with Paul's agents to redirect him to a new team. Here's more from Woj on who that new team could be.
He's 34 years old. He wants to be on a team that has playoff aspirations, and certainly for Oklahoma City, their ability to move him on will be based on, I think, teams' willingness to take on 3 years, $120 million plus on a player who certainly showed his age last season. And, that's part of the reason Chris Paul was traded out for Russell Westbrook. The market for Chris Paul is going to be small, but Miami's at the top of that list. They'd like to try to get that deal done as soon as they can. And I was told there's some other teams, too, that are going to be discussed. But their hope in getting this deal done with Chris Paul was that he doesn't play a game in a Thunder uniform.
Yeah, Woj went on to say earlier that really it's just Miami that we're talking about here for CP3. And a lot of that, Jalen, has to do with the fact that they will take on this contract. Why would it make sense for CP3 to go to Miami with Jimmy Butler?
Well, Miami will take on this deal because they have a bunch of bad deals that they want to unload. They don't have the flexibility to sign people in free agency, and they didn't necessarily have the draft equity to change their roster. They did a terrific job, to me, flipping Hassan Whiteside to Portland, who's going to be motivated and play really well for them, but didn't necessarily give the Miami Heat the anchor they were looking for. But now you need somebody to pair with Jimmy Butler, because you got a guy that's an all-star level player that chose to sign with you outright. You want to show him that you want to be a playoff team. But in Miami, a hard-playing, disciplined, and tough team as well. Chris Paul checks all of those boxes.
I look at Eric Spoelstra, I look at Pat Riley, and I look at two guys that, if you have dynamic, difficult personalities, you know what? They're not going to be difficult in Miami. And you think about the leadership of Miami, because Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra are bigger than any player on the team right now. That's just the way it is, including Alonzo Mourning as part of their leadership. So it's a good fit, but here's my deal. I understand that it's a quick fix. The guy's 34 years old. He's a point guard. If he's going to play 34 minutes a game, how many years, how many games, how much better is your team going to be taking on that contract? Or is it more saying, we want to make sure people understand we're trying to be competitive. We can't go a third year. They've gone 2 years in a row without playoffs. We can't go a third year without a playoff, so we've got to get back into playoffs. This doesn't help Pat Riley make that one more run, though, because they don't become a factor in the playoffs just with Chris Paul. So I'm not sure the investment is worth it.
Okay, I want to get your thoughts, both of you, on Kendrick Perkins. He had some interesting comments about playing with CP3. Let's take a listen to those.
People don't like playing with him. It's to the point now that we know that teammates, guys do not like playing with Chris Paul. And I've heard this from several guys that's been on his team, and you could tell just by even look at the animosity when the Rockets and Clippers played against one another. Look at the beef, the tension. And everybody was surprised. Oh, Rondo was out of character. Rondo did this. No, CP3 out of character. And it's time for him to start looking himself in the mirror.
Okay, what do we think?
I like that.
So first and foremost, Perkins having an amazing rookie season. That's my guy, 150 grand. No shots, no shade. That's my guy. I wish I had a beard like his.
Yeah, you do.
But who's his right-hand man in the league? Rajon Rondo. Who did Rajon Rondo have fisticuffs with this year? Chris Paul.
Yep.
So whose side you think he's going to take?
Okay.
Number one. That's number one, Coach. But number two, there is some validity to what Perk said.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because Chris Paul is kind of like an irritant.
He is.
If that guy was a boxer or an MMA fighter or even 7 foot tall, you wouldn't want any problems with him.
Yeah.
But since he's a guard, you see that level of behavior and you like just shoo him out of the way like a little gnat, like a fly, like watch out. But he ain't going nowhere. And that level of competitive spirit, Laura and Coach, is what he brings to a locker room. And that can be frustrating sometimes if you Blake Griffin or DeAndre Jordan or young players who he feels like value a lot of other things besides just winning today's basketball.
Does he ever look in the mirror? Does he ever look? Here's my thing. Look, if you want to lead, because he's a leader, ball's in his hands, he's a leader, you got to get people to follow you.
Yep.
So you know what? You can catch more bees with honey. So like to me, he can be an irritant. He can be competitive. Look, I love his game. I mean, you know, that has nothing to do with it, although his game's not what it used to be. But if you want to lead, you got to figure out a way to get other people to follow you. And right now, I agree with Perk because, you know, he's hard to play with. And the biggest thing is he's got to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm not the guy I used to be. So you know what? I've got to figure out a way to look in the mirror and say, what can I do well now? Not just because look in the mirror how I used to be.
Okay, is Miami, if he ends up there, does that make him look in the mirror with the people he'll be playing with?
Well, because what ends up happening is you have people that are like-minded surrounding you. So they're going to validate everything that you say because they feel the exact way. This is how Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra operate. This is how Jimmy Butler operates. When he jumped up and went to Miami, people was like, did that just happen? He took himself off the board as a major free agent. But when you're a guy like Chris Paul, a future Hall of Famer, I didn't realize I was going to wake up and die on this hill this morning, that I'm actually defending the leadership of Chris Paul, one of the best ones in the game, and the productivity of Russell Westbrook, who, by the way, has been an MVP recently. I didn't know that was going to happen this morning, but I'll be that guy.
You never know what's going to happen on Get Up in the morning.
Sometimes you got to go outside your comfort zone.
Okay, the entire complexion of the